Hi, I'm Missy with On William Street, and we are here to help you become a more confident quilter, from the piecing to the quilting and everything in between. This month, we are working on month 7 of our Mystery Quilt Along. So just a reminder, you can find all of the instructions that we are going to go over today in the video in our blog post, and you can find that blog post in the link below the video, so go ahead and click on that. It'll give you all of the details, and you can also find links to the other months, so if you need to get caught up on previous months, you can find those in there as well. For this month, we are going to be taking all of those drunkards path blocks that we pieced together earlier, and we're going to sew them together, and then we're going to work on some of the arches that we've already cut out. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to lay all of these out. So this is the top section. So there are 2 different sections in the quilt that are going to have these drunkards path blocks. So we're going to have the top section and the bottom section. The top section is going to do a 4x4 across and down, and then the bottom section is going to be a 4x3. So we're going to work on the top section first. So we're going to lay these out, and as far as how you're laying these out, it's pretty much preference on how you want to do it. There's not a specific pattern that we're following on laying these out. So really just kind of as far as the prints themselves. That's not how I have this. Then we're going to go ahead and sew them together in rows, and then we're going to sew these 4 rows together. So make sure you go to the blog post so you can see the full diagram, because it's a little hard to see here all laid out. And what we want to do is we want to make sure that these lines are going to match up so that when we're sewing all 4 pieces together, it's going to look like a complete circle. So I am going to match these up. Don't worry so much about matching the outside along this line. You can always fudge that a little bit, but I want to make sure that those 2 are matching up. So when I'm doing that, I'm always going to fold the fabric back a little bit, just so I can make sure that that's lining right up against there. And then I'm going to stick a pin right there just to hold it in place. And then I'm going to match up this side. This side, I do want to make sure I get that corner as best as I can. Sometimes the nice thing about fabric is it does stretch a little bit, so if you need to stretch it a little bit to make sure things work out, then you can do that. And then we're going to go ahead and sew a 1/4 inch seam. And then that's going to make sure that those lined up really nicely there. And then we're going to go ahead and press this. So now pressing it is really up to you. You can either press it to one side or you can press it open. Sometimes when we're dealing with a lot of bulky seams like this, especially when I'm getting to where I've got the 4 corners all together in one, I'm going to press it open just because that it helps reduce some of that bulk, and it's going to make it a little bit easier when it comes to the quilting. Okay, now that we've got all of our rows sewn together, we're going to set this piece aside and we're going to follow that same process for the smaller one. And as a reminder, this one is a 4 across by 3 down piece. So make sure you follow the diagrams in the blog post so that you have the right amounts on each of these 2 pieces. And then we're going to move on to adding our curved sections to these circle groups. So we're going to start off with our yellow and our green sections and make sure that the 2 green pieces are the same for both the top section and the bottom section. The yellow sections are not. So you want to make sure that you're keeping those separate as far as what goes in the top row versus what goes in the bottom row. We will make sure all of those details are in the blog post so that you don't get anything mixed up. But as far as this portion, it's not going to matter because these 2 green pieces are the same size. So this is going to be sewing just like you would a drunkard's path together. So I like to, when I'm sewing a bigger piece like this, as I want to find that center. It's going to help me line things up. So I'm going to fold this green piece in half. And I'm just going to give it a really good finger press right here. And then I'm going to do the same with the yellow. Fold that, and then again, just give it a good finger press right here. And then that's just going to help you as you line these pieces up. So this you can do with pins, without pins, whatever is your preference. I am a with pins drunkard's path person, so I'm going to use a few pins as I'm putting this together. And I like to start with that center piece first, and then bring in the sides. Now, when you're doing the sides of a drunkard's path, I've noticed that there are times when this like stretches a little bit, and then you end up not having just that really nice 1/4 of an inch seam right along that edge. So I like to make sure that it really lines up. I'll put a couple of extra pins in if I need to, just to make sure it stays in place. But I want to make sure that this doesn't slide over on me. So I'll put my pin down a little bit further as well to help with that. And then I'm just going to add a few pins in here just to help me smooth it in. This just helps it lay nice and flat as I'm sewing. Now this one, you do have a little bit of a different stretch in this yellow because it is a pieced panel than you might in a regular piece where it's all one solid piece. So just make sure that when you're using that stretch to help line things up, that you're not over stretching, because you do want to have a little bit of that give just to help you get everything lined up, but you don't want to overstretch it. Okay, that's all pinned in place. We're going to go ahead and sew our 1/4 of an inch seam all the way around. Okay, so now we're going to follow that same process that we did with the green and the yellow. And we are going to add the purple section. Now you want to make sure, double check the layout in the blog post that you've got this laid out in the right angle. You want to make sure that this little small end is on the right spot against this yellow edge. But we'll follow the same process that we did for the green. We're going to pin this in place after we do a center check, get it all pinned in place, and then sew. And then we will finish off with the white piece at the end. So now that we're working on the white section, you'll notice if you lay it up next that it looks a little short if you're just looking top to bottom. So one thing we want to make sure we do is we're starting from the top on the white piece. So we've got these little notches cut out of the fabric, and that's going to help you line it up right there along the top of that purple fabric. And then you're going to, don't stretch it too much as you're pulling because you don't want it to meet at the bottom, but you want to just kind of gradually pull that down. This is actually going to end a little above the bottom of the section. And then the blue piece that we sew on next is actually going to come into this purple section a little bit at the bottom. When you have all of it pinned, you're going to have about 1 inch at the bottom where the white before it meets the end of the purple. So we'll just kind of taper that off. Okay, now that we've got our white added, we're going to take our blue panel and we want to line it up. This is where it's really nice to have a bigger table. Line it up, and what we're going to do is we're just going to pin these two pieces together and sew a straight seam. So this part will be super easy, but I am going to use some pins just to make sure my curved piece down here in this area does not get folded over, and all of my curves in here, just keeping that same bulk where I want it to be instead of having it fold over where it wants to be. And now that we have the top piece all sewn together, we have our curves and then added our circles to the end. Make sure you double check the diagrams on the blog post as you're working on these. You want to make sure that you're not sewing them on backwards because the bottom section is actually going to be opposite as the top. So we're going to start with our green over in the opposite corner as our blue. And then with our white piece on this one, you're not going to end up with the same as you did on the top piece. This white piece will go all the way down to the bottom. So make sure that you're keeping that in mind when you're lining up those curves as well. And we will work on the rest of the project next month. Hopefully, if you have any questions about the curves or how you're sewing these curved pieces together, reach out, let us know. We're happy to help. And don't forget to double check the blog post for all of the instructions, all the diagrams and everything to make this process as easy as possible. And while you're there, check out our shop and look for your next modern quilting pattern. And we'll see you next week.